Hello, everybody, and welcome to Church Girls Chronicles. I hope everybody had a fabulous week. I'm gonna wait for you guys to come on in while I'm also waiting for our co-host. I am Shayna Bradley, half of the dynamic duo that makes up Church Girls Chronicles. So I hope you guys join us soon. I hope to see a lot of you on here tonight. We're going to spend some time when Steph hops on. We're going to have the great debate, or that's what we're calling it. And I hope to see you guys on here soon. And we just want to talk about the upcoming election a little bit. Hey, Soroyle, how you doing? We just want to come get on here and talk about the upcoming election. So we hope that you guys join us. I'm going to wait a few minutes and just chat with Soroyle a little bit, since she's the only one on here, to see if anybody else joins us. But Soroyle, did you get a chance to vote early, or have you voted yet? Are you going to vote? I want to know. And as people come in, and even if you're watching this later, comment and let us know. Did you vote early? Are you voting on November 5th? Are you voting at all? And I want to get people's comments and feedback. And I'm going to, of course, repeat this a little bit later on as people start to join us. But just want to see how people are feeling about it, where your mind is with it, how you feel about voting in general. Are you ready for the election? Are you ready to vote? Because you hear all these people about how you have to have a plan because the polls might be crowded, and everybody's not as fortunate to have off on election day. So it's good to find out things like what time your poll places are open and what time they're closed. So let us know. Soroyle, are you a voter or no? Let us know. Are you on here, Soroyle? Let us know. And one thing I want to talk about really quick before Steph jumps on, especially to our Black brothers and sisters, how important, the reason why, at least for me, one of the reasons why voting is so important. And it's because of, after everything we went through as Black people in this country, first we were immigrants and Africans, but now, some 400, almost 500 years later, maybe a little bit longer. Yeah. We're Americans. We're born here. We are citizens of this country. We are no longer immigrants. We live here. This is who we are. Because I hear a lot of people, we get that whole go back to Black people in the United States are Americans, and this, especially in this day and time, this is our country of origin, in that I was born here. Now, are my ancestors and all of that from other countries? Absolutely. We did trace our family history back some, a short way as far as we could find it. But with all of that being said, I think it's important to remember the things that we had to fight for in this country, even though we had been here for years. And voting is one of those things. I was looking at some things on social media and just doing a little bit of research. I had started to try to look for some places that I could maybe vote early and, get it taken care of before November 5th, and things like voter registration and poll taxes and things like that started to come up. And I'm not sure if everybody knows, but poll tax is something that was used back in the Jim Crow South, especially, but not exclusively, to disenfranchise certain groups of people. And that certain group of people at the time were Black people. So what would happen is you would have to pay to vote. And back then, everything was much cheaper, right? So if I tell you that it costs $2 or $3 for poll tax, you'd probably be like, that's nothing. But when that's all you were making in 1 week or in 1 month, and you had to decide whether or not you're going to feed your family or go vote, it put you in a tough position. And that was the whole point, right? Was to put Black people in a position where they felt like they couldn't vote. Like our voice didn't matter. We didn't have any say so in the governing or the government of our country. And it didn't end until 1965. And contrary to what some of these young people might think, that wasn't that long ago. 1965 it wasn't that long ago. I know people who were born before then. You know, my sister Stephanie, she was only born 5 years later. She was born in 1970. So it wasn't that long ago. And for Black people to say, or for me to hear that, you know, there are Black folks who are choosing not to vote, kind of breaks my heart, because there's a lot of people who gave their lives, gave of themselves, risked their lives, went to jail, all the things to make sure that we had that right. And they were fighting against a lot. It wasn't, you know, only just, Jim Crow laws, but they were going over and beyond and overextending this poll tax. And I saw a clip on Instagram not too long ago of a woman, a beautiful Black woman who was out at the polls. She was voting early, and she had a t-shirt. And on her t-shirt, she had her actual original voting ticket, and it showed on there where she was being charged a certain amount of money to vote. And she put it on her shirt, and I forget what the bottom of the shirt said, but I think it said, well, this is why I'm voting today, or something like that. Or this is why I'm at the polls. Because it's a right that we have. And I think, you know, we should take advantage of the fact that there are so many people who couldn't do that for so long. You think about all of our forefathers who until 1960, even before 1965, we really didn't even have the right to even show up at the polls. And then when they said, okay, you can come, but now you have to pay. And now you're choosing between exercising my right to vote, or paying for my right to vote, and taking care of my family. And for a lot of people, they had to choose to take care of their family. So I want everybody to reconsider. And as you're coming on, hopefully we get to see some people coming on soon. I know it's Halloween. I don't know how many of us as Christians are celebrating Halloween, how many folks are out trick-or-treating. No judgment. Do you? Listen, I went when I was younger, so I get it. Just be safe out there. I hear the little kiddos in my neighborhood making their rounds. They don't come to my door though, and rightfully so, because I don't ever have any candy. So I think they learned a long time ago to stop knocking. But so I hope that as people jump on, you tell me whether or not you voted early, if you're waiting until election day. Do you have a plan? Like, what's your plan for election day? Are you planning to get up and go vote, go have breakfast, go have brunch, and then like chill the rest of the day if you have the day off? Or you planning to go to work? Or you planning to vote before you go to work? Like, what's your plan for voting day? And as that happens, I want to not only talk about how important it is to vote for the president, but how important it is to vote for Congress and vote for state representatives. And Senate representatives, because they're the ones who really kind of make the decisions. The president is kind of like a figurehead. He has some sort of veto power. My sister Talisha sent me something the other day, reminder how the Schoolhouse Rock cartoons were back in the day, and they taught us things about how bills and laws were made. And the president doesn't sign off on those things. That's the Senate and the Congress. So when you go to the polls, make sure you're voting for everything, not just for the president. Vote for the Senate, vote for the Congress seats if they're open in your state, if they're open in your jurisdiction. Make sure you're voting for everything, because those positions matter. They probably matter more than the presidency. So I think it's really important for everybody to make sure that you vote early if you can, to avoid the rush, to avoid the lines, to avoid, the folks getting out there and having to wait. But just to make sure you vote. Just it's important, especially now. We have the potential of making history again. We made history some years ago. What was that? 12 years ago when Barack Obama won, and we had our first Black family in the White House. And now we have the opportunity to also make history by getting our first woman in the White House as the president. So I want to make sure, hey Talishi, I want to make sure that everybody is ready and prepared and really considering going out there and voting. I hear the arguments all the time about, oh, my vote doesn't matter, but it truly does. It really, truly does. And just kind of to recap, Steph's going to be joining us soon. She had an errand to run and got stuck in a little traffic. So y'all pray that she makes it safe, but she'll be joining us, hopefully momentarily. But in the meantime, our show tonight was going to be about voting, about the election. We're going to have a little mock debate when she gets on here. She wanted to be Donald Trump. And I want to preface this, and she's going to say this soon when she gets on here. When we finally do start a debate, our debate is not necessarily expressing how we feel about things. It's just going over some of what some of the topics and the platforms that the two candidates are running on. But anywho, like I was saying, voting, how important it is to vote for everything, to vote for Senate, vote for Congress, vote for anything that's available to vote for. Take the time to look up the people. I don't know about you guys, and it's the law. I get a sample ballot in the mail, and I should have brought it over here. But I get a sample ballot in the mail. And on that ballot, it tells you what offices are open for election. And that gives you the opportunity to go and to do your research and check out what platforms these folks are running on, not just the president, but whoever is running for office, so that you can be educated about the candidates. Whether it's a Congress seat that's open or a Senate seat that's open, or any of your local positions that may be open for election. Go ahead and take a look at your sample ballot. Also, take your sample ballot with you to the polls, because there's a barcode on there, and they should be able to scan it and kind of get you checked in a little bit earlier. There's other things you need to look for that might be disenfranchisement, where it's illegal for them to write on your ballot ticket as you go into the polls. So if they're doing that, make sure you give it back and ask them to give you another one, because it invalidates your vote if you put it in there and it's written on. I don't know all the nuances about what to look out for. Look at her. There she is. I don't know all the nuances about what to look out for, but I do know that Stephanie hops on. Did I get her? Hey, sister. Hello. Hi.
Hey there. Hey.
So glad you made it safely.
Yes.
We were just talking about election day. I was just
Ooh.
yammering on and on about how important it is for us to vote, especially as Black people. So I talked about the poll tax for a little bit and how that did not go away until 1965, which was only 5 years before you were born. So it wasn't that long ago. And, I think people in general think that stuff like that, those types of things that were happening to us as Black folks in this country was like millions of years ago. No, so it
Oh
doesn't
yeah.
matter now.
That's big, where people think that 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 was so long ago. And especially, I think that has a lot to do to the generations. They just, things have moved so rapidly. And I
Mm-hmm.
think that they think that this was forever ago, but I have to tell. No, I remember.
Mhm.
I remember things that were definitely like,
Right. That we
very
witnessed.
real.
Yeah, and I think also like with the poll tax, I think that little they always like found a little gotcha moment because the one thing with the poll tax that I thought was like really like down low. I think the whole thing was down low, right? But they had this grandfather clause.
I'm putting turn the light. Something.
Oh, she's getting up. What happened?
Light.
Oh, there you go. They had this grandfather. I don't know what that's about. They had this grandfather clause. So if your grandfather voted in previous elections, then you could vote. But they knew that those black slaves
Had
didn't have,
voted
you
right.
know, like y'all. They thought they was slick,
Oh,
you
the
know.
whole lot of little things that people don't realize. It's so interesting. It's all very interesting. Like I said, I think it's all very, very interesting. How quickly we
Unfair
forget
literacy
those things. Yeah,
tests,
those things that
you
happened
know,
and
that
still
kind of
continue to
thing.
happen. But I have to say, I had an epiphany today.
Oh, I like epiphanies.
No, people may not like this
Mm.
epiphany. I be having my own little mind about things
Well, you
sometimes.
should have your own mind. You can have somebody
But
else's mind, except for the mind of
yes,
Christ.
that's the only mind I have.
That was
But I've
so
always
deep.
felt
That was
like
so deep. Go ahead. What?
it was very deep. I'll be thinking to myself sometimes, well, I've always had this concept of like idea that it's always an ant crawling about it anywhere, nowhere.
You have to ignore him. Come on, let's
I
go.
can't just squirreling all day. But oh no, that's not an ant.
What
Is
are
that a
you
gnat?
doing? Are you seriously stopping in the middle of your comment?
Yes, because that is bothering me. But I squirrel. But
You
it
don't
bothered me.
focus.
It's termitish. But okay, very much. But all right, I'm back. I was saying that I have this whole idea. I probably shouldn't even share this on live, but I have embedded this thought with anyone but myself, which is dangerous in and of itself. But I've always felt like
Always or
sometimes
recently?
that always felt like I've always had some thoughts. Okay, I'll put it this way: what would life have been like had we not segregated?
Have we not segregated or have we not integrated?
Integrated
I
and
mean,
stayed and
I'm not mad
remained
at that thought.
segregated.
I'm not mad. I mean, because not for nothing, we tried to have our own stuff.
We had
We
our own stuff.
had our own stuff. We had a lot of cities
We
in the
had our own
U.S.
stuff,
that
and
had black banks. All black communities were
yeah,
thriving. Had our own doctors. Had our own schools. They were thriving communities that got burned down. Tulsa. What was it? Was it Tulsa? The more famous one.
uh, Tulsa.
Hi,
Hmm.
Barry Terrell Beecham.
Hey Barry. I don't Rosewood, Black
Rosewood,
Wall
but
Street.
the Talisha, what's the most popular one that people
Black
talk
Wall
about all
Street
the time?
in Oklahoma.
Black Wall Street, but there was one in the Midwest too.
That
Not,
was the
shoot.
Midwest. The
Oh
one in
yeah,
the Midwest was Black Wall
yeah,
Street.
that one. Yes.
Rosewood
Enough.
was
I
in
mean,
Rosewood was in Florida. Manhattan, people don't know
Central Park
Central Park
is
was
built over a
black
black community.
a black community, black and Native American community.
Yes.
Um,
There's a lake. There's a lot of lakes that they just drowned
whole
whole towns.
black communities. Yes. So I think historically, when you look at it that way, oftentimes I say to myself, we couldn't have thrived at that time, or we weren't able to thrive at that time. I think what I wonder what it would look like now if we were to become,
Yeah. Yeah.
and what if circumstances were to flip, right, and say things don't work out the way we want them to.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it would be a great opportunity for us as a people to galvanize and really be able to
Do that
Seneca
again.
Village.
Seneca Village.
Yeah,
Yes.
do that again. Because I feel like we've been empowered enough to know, and we've learned enough and gotten some new information, and some things have changed legally enough for us to be able to galvanize and to do some things. I would like to see what that would look
So
by
here, let me
creating,
ask you: do you think they have changed enough?
I think that I don't know that, yeah, not so much for us, but I think what's happened is I think we're in a more tolerable state. I think it's a level of tolerance. The tolerance level is different, right? And I think in general, these younger generations, um, regardless as to what happens, their toleration of um, traditional, historically, what we've experienced as far as racism is concerned is not going to allow. I mean, I believe it can get real ugly, but I think at the end of the day, as we've always done, we can come out on top
Yeah.
and and be doing the things we need to do, especially us as if that becomes the case,
Hmm.
as believers. I feel like my mind went back to the scripture actually, went back to Jeremiah and and even Israel at the time of exile. They were allowed to be of captivity. They were encouraged to live with them and to observe their laws, but observe their culture.
Hmm.
But they were allowed to maintain their character and they were allowed to maintain their culture and their identity
Identity.
within that. And I think we've established an identity for ourselves in this country. I think it's a misnomer to believe that blacks in America are not are without identity anymore.
No.
I
Well,
don't think so. I think we have an identity. I think we have a culture. I think it's integrated. It's part of the American fabric, and I feel like we do need to reclaim that.
I think we've always had an identity. I think for ourselves. Hey,
I
Irv.
disagree. I
I,
disagree
I I
in the
think
sense of
we've
being able to
always
relate it back to a culture. I don't. I think that we want. When I say identity, I'm thinking like Latin America can relate back to their Latin roots in
well,
particular places.
I'll
If
say
you're
this.
Jamaican, you can go back to Jamaican culture. If you're
I
African, you
think
can
we've
say I
had
can be African.
I think we have an identity. I think we've always had an identity, even when
Good
we came
evening,
here. Hey,
Irv.
Irving, how are you? And the reason why I say that is because when we were brought here, we created one. We had to create one because not for nothing, most of what the U.S. was built on and used, and it was created or invented by Black people. And to this day, our culture, I think, is one of Black American culture is one of the most stolen or appropriated cultures, I think, in the
I feel
world.
like we've. So
And
I,
I
I would
also
agree.
think
Go
that
ahead.
night. I think now, like I think the young people now, I think their efforts and their mindset kind of parallel those of the 1950s and 60s and the civil rights movement. Now how strong-willed they were and how just forward thinking they were and willing to just do whatever. I think it forwards that. I mean, I think it parallels that. I
I
just
agree.
believe
I would,
that
I would agree with that.
now.
I would
I
agree
just
with that.
think now I think now if we don't have the right people in place, that those young folks will speak out, but I think it will look a lot like the 1950s and 60s. I think it'll
Well,
definitely go back
and
to
that's all right.
more of, the hosing and the dogs and because without the right people in office, they're not gonna want us to do that.
Well, let's rewind because I want to rewind back to something you said originally when I was talking about because it was my first thought was about this idea of identity, and you were saying how you feel like have an identity because we created a lot of what you
Yeah, I think we
experience. I I
created
I
one.
believe an identity emerged, right.
Hmm.
Um, identity emerged, a unique identity emerged over time from us as a people. I believe that identity, however, we were not able to, um, although we,
Maintain our
well, not just
original.
maintain. I think although we have it, I don't believe that we're connected to it. And
No, no,
I say
no.
that I say that because it we have it, and I believe it became and how we express and move and be largely was birthed out of trauma. So it was the identity that we experienced as a result of the trauma that we were also experiencing as a people here,
Well,
right?
and that's
So so there's this lack of connection to the best parts of it, or the parts of it that now we can. And not only that, I think we're disconnected from it because it didn't benefit us, no matter what we did, right? There was no benefit for us during those times as a people. It was used, it was abused, it was tainted.
stripped
So
away
it's
from
hard to be
us. Yeah.
connected to it, right? As a result. But I think now, as we begin to, as generations have come on, like you said, that 1950s generation, reclaiming it, finding pride in blackness, finding beauty. Now I see that emerging once again in these generations, the way that they interpret things as black people, reclaiming ourselves, reclaiming the beauty, reclaiming the difference, saying that it's, I want to be celebrated for the fact that I am different and it's okay, right? And for you to embrace that fully and completely without having to make excuses for it,
Mhm.
right?
And that's
Um,
and before you hopped on, I did say, I mentioned that as Black Americans, we're not like our ancestors who were brought here. We're not the same culturally. We're different.
mhm.
The connection is only there because we know because we go through our lineage or whatever, to find out how we got here. Um, so that
Uh,
is our only connection, and we had to, like you were saying, create a different culture for ourselves, in so many ways. So yeah, I agree with you that
I don't know
we
that I
don't
think that's
have
our
any
only
connection
connection to
to
our
our
ancestors, but I hear
original,
you.
our
Yeah,
origins, maybe.
yeah.
Because I totally cannot identify with African life and living and culture.
Right.
um but I think we did a decent job, or tried our best to do a decent job in keeping some of the, what's the word, the essence of it. It still exists, in some of us.
I
um
think way more than the essence of it
you
exists. I
know
think that it's ingrained in us. I think what we've done is it's become the culture of it's specific to people who are born in this
right,
country and are descendants of the enslaved.
right,
And I think it's deeply rooted. All of that is deeply rooted in who we are as
right,
individuals.
because
I don't,
even
yeah.
Black people in other countries that are not African countries are not like Black Americans here.
Yeah, no,
It's just
because they
they're
they
just
don't
not.
have that same, yeah, they don't have that same
They
experience.
don't have the
And
same
it's also,
experience.
yeah, and so I think I don't know. I feel so when I think of, right, the whole identity piece. Like I said, I think we're in a time where um, we can hold that, we can see it for what it is and claim it for what it is, and um, connect to it fully,
Mhm.
and also demand that it be recognized as an integral part of the fiber of this country.
Yeah,
And it may mean us, you know, pulling away to make that a reality. And I
yeah,
think, I think that that's,
and
in,
I think that pulling away, though, I think it would be good, for us to have
well,
our
I
own
think
stuff.
situations may force us into having to
However,
do it. Right, right, right.
what?
I think situations may force us into having to do it. Like if situations, you know, um, go a particular way, I feel like that's part of what will happen. It'll force us into those spaces of
I
having
think.
to.
I mean, I don't know what situation you're talking about. And if that situation includes, who wins, is kind of centered around who wins the election or whatever the case may be. I think one way one way could be easier, and another way would be harder. Um, I think we should pull away regardless as to what happens to the election. I think we should really start trying to reestablish, those things that were destroyed before, that were already established and destroyed. I think Black people should work on, having our own economics and supporting our own economics, and supporting each our own businesses, and building our own communities, and our what is the our compounds and family compounds and all those things. I'm here for all of that. Building our own schools so that our children can be educated with the truth and in a way that's beneficial to them and to us as a our culture. I regardless as to how the election goes, I support that thought process. I just think that it would be easier for us one way than it will be for us if it went a
See,
different way.
and it's funny because understanding the political perspectives and standings on both sides of that, that's where I was at in my thought today. I don't necessarily agree with that. I think it would be easier to do, um, because there are certain things that will be implemented that would create the opportunity for us to do in those spaces. I think,
You may have to be specific. I don't know what you mean.
so when you talk about, like, the top five debatable issues between the Democrats and the Republicans, when we talk about education, right?
Mm-hmm.
So while they are like this, the initiative on the one hand is to really reinforce public education, how it's run, blah blah blah. On the other hand, the initiative is to give freedoms to people to be able to be more, to create more charter schools and more spaces where people can, be specific about where they send their children, pull them out if necessary, do what needs to be done in those areas.
But
Um,
along with that initiative comes very specific rules and guidelines on funding for schools and what kind of funding will be provided if you don't follow a certain set of rules and guidelines. You
right.
may have the freedom to pull your child out and relocate them and do all the things, but along with that comes the restriction of, okay, let's start a community school, but we're not gonna get no funding. We're not gonna have the support that we need, maybe financially, to be able to get the school started or be able to get our all of our certifications and all of the clearances that we need if we're not following a specific set of uh, rules and guidelines that they set forth.
So let's play devil's advocate, because, like I said, like it triggered the thought about segregation in my brain,
Mm-hmm.
because that was the whole point, right? Integration. That was the drive for integration. It was the issue of funding. But the question was, were our children not being effectively and, um, completely educated,
No,
though? And they
no, my
were
thing
in the
is this.
second. Let me
I
finish my
agree
thought. Yeah, let me
with
finish the
that.
thought. So during that time period, we were still creating inventors and people who were doing things. All that stuff was happening. I mean, I don't know if even people know, in Bordentown, there was an all black vocational school in Bordentown, where a lot of our middle class, upper class people now, their great grandparents and grandparents went and were
Went to
able to
that school.
gain trade and be able to make more and be considered, middle class people for going through those spaces. So the question not is, when we were able to do it for ourselves, even without the funding, right? The federal funding, and we were doing it for ourselves, with ourselves. We were not behind,
No, no, no. I agree.
but
We were
with
not
the
behind.
funding, we are.
We were not
With the funding,
behind.
there's a lot of marginalization going on. There's a lot of, that's happening in schools, and our kids that look like us are not, are falling way, 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 way behind.
Yeah, they
They,
are.
even with the funding, if you live in a particular place, you're not getting funded like you would if you lived in another place.
Right. And that's the thing. True, I agree. And they are falling way, way, way behind. And I think it's all very still segregated. I think it is kind of still segregated, because our neighborhoods are segregated. So I think there is some like, for instance, the school I teach at is 95% Latino. And if I were to maybe go up the street 30 minutes, it'd be 95% black. And another 30-minute drive, it'll be 98% white. So I think to some degree, our schools are still, there is some segregation. because our communities and our neighborhoods are set up that way. um how and yeah, we were able to establish our own schools, and then without the government funding, like the school in Bordentown and the schools in these other towns that we had mentioned earlier. And I'm not just I don't know all the nuances of that particular platform, but the things that I did read made gave me pause, because it's also being able to buy the building and being able to buy, the land that's going to be available, or the property that's going to be available, or to be able to house the kids to come to school, or maybe we need to start having them in people's homes. And are the laws around having, a certain amount of children in a certain place going to change? And how quickly will they adjust or react to the things that we are trying to do, to be able to get our neighborhoods back, and to be able to get our kids and our education back, and to be able to separate and kind of have our own thing going like we did before, after, emancipation, when Black folks were, setting up their own communities and thriving and had
Yeah.
our own banks.
Yeah.
And I just I think though too, on top of all of that, like I just think the people in general are going to be even more emboldened than they are now to be racist and crazy. And
I think, and it's interesting because I guess I've been, this whole thing for me is six in one hand and half a dozen in another. So I'm not on. I'm like, I'm definitely. That's how I feel about it all, right? And um, I hate when people ask me where my political stance is at this point, because I really am six in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
mm,
Um, because then the other question becomes, am I a Christian first or am I Black first? And I'm a believer first. And
yeah,
so
I think
not
it's,
to, not to,
different.
and um,
And I think
that's
too, I think
good.
I think too, it's not really knowing what you mean when you say six in one hand and half, specifically knowing what you mean when you say six in one hand, half a dozen in the other.
Yeah,
I think when I talk about, I'm talking about regular everyday people and their boldness that is front and center. You know what
yeah,
I mean? And it's becoming more front and center,
yeah.
and how they
That's
interact.
gonna be, that's crazy, right?
Right.
I don't care what happens. I think that's gonna be crazy.
Right.
That's gonna go
I think
crazy
especially
for
especially the
little bit.
onset, because if he loses, they're gonna go off. They're gonna be crazy.
Right, it's gonna
But
be
I
crazy.
think it'll die down.
Right,
When I say
that
die down, I
right.
don't mean go away. But I think, because even the 4 years that we had, they were off the chain.
And as I said, I don't think that that's something that Pandora's box, as far as that's concerned, has been reopened, and we're seeing it play out in other spaces and in other ways. But it's nothing that we're not used to, or not like we're not aware of. Like we know that this is not new navigating territory, right? Because how real different. I think we buy into the illusion of things being super super different when it really isn't super super different. And I think when we buy into that, that we feel like we have so much to lose in that space. And I'm not a believer that we do. Um, I mean, I believe that there are the things that we're definitely going to lose if Project 25 comes to play. But but like I said, the other hand to that is, um, I can't really like that's. Is that going to change the way my fears about my son to walk in the streets? I, no,
No.
I still have those same fears. They're going to still exist. They may be a little more heightened. I might be a little bit more concerned. Um, but I've had those fears all their lives because those things have always existed.
Yeah, they've
You
always
understand?
existed.
And
They've always
and people
existed.
have been getting away with doing it forever and
Right.
ever and ever.
But I think things like having it, because the whole thing about the police and them having amnesty and all that thing, all that stuff, and that definitely heightens it. It doesn't take it away if if the election goes the other way, right? Because they still gonna do what they want to do, and they still gonna,
And that's the way it
I
was
just
before
think that
George Floyd in 2020. So
right. I think that some of the laws that are in place, even for the presidency itself, that remove all responsibility of criminal behavior from anything that he says that somebody should do. You know what I mean? He can call a whole state and be like, listen, I think it's okay for you guys to go ahead and get rid of everybody in Camden County. And if he does it under the auspices of the presidency, him and everybody who helps him do it walks away scot free. And I think that's going to give people the mindset in believing that, oh, I can just do whatever I want to do now because of these types of things, because they already misconstrue the law already. They already misconstrue all of the the laws and things that are in place to keep us safe. They already bend those to the point of breaking them. So if they're lifted, I think they're just gonna go look wild.
Yeah, I don't. Like I say, I think the original question was for me. What you said was the six? Six a dozen in one hand, six in another. The trade-off, on the other hand, is just what I see happening, right? And I'm watching happening with people and mental health and all the stuff, and I'm just like, these gray areas are just so super gray, have people so super confused. And we're just in a world where people are extremely unstable. And
it's the whole world. It's not just
it's the whole world, but here in the United States it's really, really a little bit extra.
Oh, for sure.
But because Western civilization has its own bubble for sure. And
stuff up as they go.
Yes, they do. And I don't know that I could just what is concrete anymore. Right. Like, what do we know? Like, what do we turn? And I feel like the more and more, so that's kind of where I say six in one hand and half a dozen in another, over it all, because there was just so much, and level of compromise. And then how much too is, on the one hand, it's, yes, let's be the people who are for the people and operate in love. And I am 100% that person. Like, the first rule is the golden rule, and that is to love thy neighbor as yourself. And to understand and fully that that's, the call of the people of, of God, of what we should be doing. It's just decency. But to what degree do we not ask people to, give people some boundaries and say, hey, now it's time to kind of pull it together. So, like, those are the two sides of the argument. I've been kind of just reading up on the two sides of the argument, praying, and just whatever it is. And I've just been like, yeah, I guess so. And because every time I get deeply into any of it, I find myself in that place, like, a dozen in one hand, six in another. It really does feel like that to me.
I think for me too, I think what is something that's kind of in the front of my brain is the fact that this one party is really, they're in the business of overturning Supreme Court rulings, right? And I don't think a lot of people realize that a lot of our civil rights are not laws.
Oh, yeah, no.
They're only protected by Supreme Court rulings. I mean, they've already proved that when they, took away, the whole Roe versus Wade thing. And for me, that's a big deal, because the things like the whole Jim Crow was all a Supreme Court ruling.
Yeah.
It wasn't a law that changed the Jim Crow laws. it was the Supreme Court ruling that changed, that brought about that change.
Mm-hmm.
And Supreme Court rulings can be overturned
Mm-hmm.
and reversed. And if they're in the business of doing that, there's a laundry list of civil rights that can be taken away if they want to just start going in there and hacking away at them.
Yeah. I think that's the other part too for me that I think about, like when you go to talking about that part, and it's just like, wow, yeah, you can just go right on in there, and but man, this is the crazy stuff, right? Where we've embraced or we've been enveloped into or grouped into this whole, everybody's civil rights is kind of all grouped all together
Mm-hmm.
now, and so yeah, it makes sense that if we, now that we've made everybody's all around here the same.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Um,
I mean, there's racial discrimination, Supreme Court rulings. There's gender and sex discrimination, Supreme Court rulings. There's gay and lesbian rights and sexual orientation discrimination, Supreme Court rulings.
mhm,
Religious freedoms that are covered by Supreme Court rulings. Disability discrimination that's covered by Supreme Court rulings and not laws.
right. And
Um,
they lumped them all together in one place, and it's just interesting to me too. And you're right. That's a definite concern. Like it's just like I said. It's so many things about all of this that is so convoluted,
mhm.
um, and it just,
I mean, because Dred was it Dred Scott? Dred Scott, I think
yeah,
that's the Supreme Court ruling that is just basic rights for specifically Black
I know.
people.
Yeah, yeah. It gives us we were no longer one third human. What is that?
I think that
That one.
yeah,
And
and
we're
I think it applied to whether or not they were a slave or free.
right. And it does. And I think, well, the other part to that, I mean, it's just a whole lot because there's certain rules that still are on the books that just started getting overturned in 2020, 2021. They're very specific to us as a people.
Yeah.
And
So, quick check-in. Hi guys.
hey, hey,
If you have hopped
hey,
on, like I said, I know it's Halloween and some people are probably out trick or treating. So, trick and treat. Do what you're doing.
yeah, why don't do
Um,
that?
but if you are here with us still, we're talking about the upcoming election on November 5th.
Mhm.
And let us know, did you vote early? Are you waiting until November 5th to vote? Do you have a plan? Like, I have a plan for November 5th. I'm excited about my little voting day. And do you
Me
plan on
too.
voting at all? Yes or no? Let us know. Hey, Coco down, so
Hang
let
on,
us know
guys.
whether or not that is something that you plan for. I'm gonna get up and go and vote early. I'm gonna have me some brunchy brunch, and then I'm going to come home and grade papers.
Yeah, ours is a teacher work day, which is very interesting for
Is
me
it?
because I'm not used to it.
Oh, we
Yeah,
have off. I'm so
and
excited
And
about
normally you have
it.
off for election day, but this year is a teacher work day. So I'm gonna be like, what? I'm gonna go vote and
I don't
come.
like that for you. I'm
So
sorry.
yeah, so I have
You
to
should
go to
fight. You
work.
should fight for your right to have that back.
Right? It's a
Because
teacher
that
work day,
sucks.
so I gotta go to
That was
work.
my
And I'm like,
favorite part
why am
about going
I
to
at the
school.
job? So I have to go to work and find stuff to do that day, which is fine.
Yeah. So, and if you do have to work on election day, I encourage you to find out what time your polls are open, so you don't miss it. I mentioned earlier how you get a sample ballot mailed to your home where you live, wherever you're registered to vote, and you can check that out and see what seats are open for election in case you want to do some research on the candidates. And don't just vote for the president. Vote vote for every office.
Yes, please. That's
Don't
a
just
must.
just don't.
Yeah, all of them count.
Laws
Yeah,
are not made by the President of the United States.
no,
Laws are made by Congress
all the
and
necessary
Senate.
people. That's
Um,
true. You gotta vote for
you
everything and
gotta
everybody right there. They're
vote
doing
for
the things.
everybody.
Got to do the things. Got to do the
Gotta
things.
do the things. Don't just click one lever or push one button and walk out the situation. Go make sure you vote for every office. that is open. And like I said, your sample ballot will give you the list of those names and those seats that are open if you wanted to go and do some research to find out whatever you need to find out about those people. If you haven't already gone and cast your
Get,
votes.
please, please, and please know who you are and do the research for yourself. Read up, find out who's running for what. A lot of times we go in there and we don't always realize who's running for what. You just be pushing buttons because you know what people are standing on and what they're talking about. Because
Mm-hmm.
just because I don't know, I'm not of the belief that you have to be one party or another. If
No.
somebody, you value the things that that particular person stands for, and they're not like in
Mm-hmm.
your party,
Right.
and then you do that for that, and then you go
Right.
back to your party for something else. But like I think you got to know what people are doing, and
Mm-hmm.
where people are working, because not everybody that's in one particular party necessarily endorses in every way the
Mm-hmm.
thoughts, feelings, and beliefs of people in another particular
Mm-hmm.
party.
And
Um,
it, and if you live somewhere where you feel like it's shady, read up on your voting rights.
yeah,
Do your
please,
research on what you are allowed to do,
right,
what you aren't allowed to do, what they are allowed to do when you show up at the polls.
yeah,
Read up on your voting rights, what's allowable and what's not allowable. I know I mentioned earlier about writing on your ballot, that being that nullifying your ballot. So there are a lot of things that are not allowed to happen when you show up at the
right,
polls. So if you don't do anything else, if you live somewhere and you know that it might be a little shysty, and even if it's not shysty, just educate yourself
right,
so that you are aware and you know what your rights are. I think as Black people, if we don't do anything else, educate yourself. Know your
definitely
rights.
know what you got to
Know
do.
what your rights are, not just when it comes to voting, when it comes to driving, when it comes to getting pulled over. What are your rights?
Right.
You can defend yourself if you know what your rights are. And I
Okay.
think
Yeah.
as going forward, even past the election, once a decision has been made, um, if we don't do nothing else as a people, find out read up on what your rights are,
Definitely
what they're
need to know
allowed
that.
to
Definitely
do
need to
to
know what your
you.
rights are.
Yeah, because I think it paralyzes us when we don't know. I think it puts us in a position where we get hemmed up a lot of times because we don't know, or we just don't do because we don't know. So because that's been something that I've been really wanting to do and wanting to take charge of more, um, um, deliberately, is finding out what my rights are.
Right.
Because they'll run up on you and say anything and be
Please believe it.
like, you got to come with me. No, I don't. You know what I mean? So
That's
no
the
choice.
truth.
They
Yeah, you
will.
got
They'll
to know
run
what
up
your
on you
rights
and
are. You
say
got to know what it
anything.
is. Right. You got to know. Just being aware, period. Educating yourself is important. It's so funny because I was just, it doesn't take nothing no more. Like back in our day, it really is. You get Copilot or ChatGPT and ask it a question. It'll
Yep.
explain whatever you need
Yep. It
it
sure
to
will.
explain for real. And
Yep.
you need more detail about it. It'll break it down for you. Whatever. Like you don't even have to like listen. You ain't got to go to the
Mm-mm.
Dewey Decimal System and go down the car
Nothing.
catalog
Do
and
decimal
find it.
system.
No, no, you don't have to do that, and you don't have to be stuck listening to a particular
Yep.
newscast or whatever. Research is really at the touch of a button and just a question,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And I think it's so important for us to understand that it's too easy out here now.
And
It's
even
too
if you
easy. It's no need to
you're a little
be.
AI shy
Yeah,
like me, you can just Google what are
yeah.
my
Ain't no reason.
rights
Right,
at the
Google and read it
polls.
yourself. Right, but it's no need to be ignorant concerning the devil's devices.
Not the devil's devices. No need to be ignorant concerning the devil's
No need
devices.
to be ignorant concerning his
You still
devices,
got
child.
some little deep comments on here tonight.
They don't need to be ignorant, honey. Let us be in the know all the time.
Listen, I think it's, what is it? The American Civil Liberties Union, the ACLU. They have a website where you can go and look up your voting rights. Um, and I think it's for every state. The
Yeah, it's
ACLU of New
important to know them
Jersey.
because you can't be letting people, dupe you out of stuff.
Yeah. Yeah, know what your rights are. And League of Women Voters. Know what your rights
all the
are.
things.
Yeah, yeah,
There's
yeah.
just too much information for you not to
Look it up, look it
not
up,
to
look it
know.
up,
Yeah.
so that you don't get there. And also, like I said, look up your polling place, look up the hours.
And even the things that have changed. Like I think there are things that have changed. People,
Yes,
not all felons. Like people think
they
that know
they
your
can't
rights as
vote.
a that you
Yeah,
can't that you think you can't vote under what circumstances. Like figure it out so you can know what
yeah,
it is you have a right to do or not
and
do.
double
I think it's important.
and double check too, because every state is different when it comes to
Every state is different. Yeah.
all of the things, including the registration cutoff date. I
Hmm.
think for most states it's passed. I think
Yeah, it's definitely. I think in October.
so.
Early
But that
October.
doesn't mean that you can't register to vote for the next election. And just
Hmm.
double check. Maybe you didn't miss it. Maybe some folks are just, oh, I've missed the cutoff date for registration. Just double check, just to be sure, so that you're not in the position where you could have and you didn't.
And you did. Right.
Because
Right.
what's not going to happen is they're not going to come and tell you.
Yes, you're not. Knowledge is power.
They're not
For
going to knock
real.
on your door and run it down. They'll knock on your door for everything else, but ain't nobody going to come knock on your
It's
door and
sure
tell you
not.
what your rights are.
No, not and you're not what you have. The greatest arsenal you have is information.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yep.
It's
And
information.
I know that there's like I'm looking at the ACLU site right now. Like they have a frequently asked questions section. How do I know if the machine counted my vote? Um, you have the right. Oh, one thing tripped me up one time too that I have to do some research on. I went to go vote for an off. Um, I don't want to call it off season, but it wasn't a presidential election. It was a local election.
Okay.
And I got to the polls, and it said that because I hadn't declared whether or not I was Democrat or Republican, that I couldn't vote at the poll. And I had to do a mail in ballot, and the date for the mail in ballot had passed. So I had to do a quick whomping and whooshing and do a quick research to find out if that was true. And I found out that it wasn't true because the person was just, they could be mistaken. They're not lawmakers. The people who run the polls, they're usually
Right. You don't have
volunteers.
to declare
Hmm.
that. What if you're independent?
Exactly.
Like, what? I
So
mean, what you
I ran
mean?
out to
I'm
my
out here doing what
car.
I do want to do.
Exactly. I ran out to my car, did a quick little Google, and I went back in and was like, "You're wrong." Boom, boom, boom. I can vote. So they had to let me vote. Um, so do your research because they'll try to get you.
And
They'll
it's
try
so
to get you. They'll even
funny
tell
because
you
I've
where you
never,
can
ever
register.
paid attention to it. I've never really ever had a problem voting.
Yeah.
Um, but I've heard the stories of others, and I'm like, what? I be in here like la 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 la,
Mm-hmm.
you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Skating on,
Mm-hmm.
but
Yeah, that was the
um,
only time I had an issue. So yeah,
and I don't recall
but
doing
it did.
any of
It
those
took me
things,
off
right?
guard. Huh?
Checking whether I'm Democrat or Republican. I don't recall.
Yeah,
Listen, I don't even recall when I registered to vote. Okay,
I
I probably
do.
did when I was
I
18.
remember. I remember. I was so excited. I was so
I,
excited because I
I
turned
remember. I think I did it when
18.
I think I signed up for my when I got ready to get my driver's license. But it's interesting because when I moved here, I never will forget. It was the election year for Obama, 2012. It
Mm-hmm.
was the Obama Trump election. Was it Obama Trump?
Mm-hmm.
No, it was
No,
Obama. Obama. What's the other guy
that
name?
he that he beat the first time. Bush, wasn't it one of the
No, it wasn't
Bush
Bush.
brothers?
Mm-mm.
Who did Obama
What
beat the first time?
was it? McCain?
Yes,
2012?
that feels right.
I don't know, but 2012 elections, honey. And when I want y'all to know, I never lived in the South before,
Oh, that's what
so
I'm saying in little
it was an
sketchy spots.
experience to say
Mm-hmm.
the least. When he won, and I was, living in the South. I was living on an evangelical campus, and it was just some things, man. It was some very, very interesting things. I didn't go out though that next day. So if that for real, like no joke,
And
for
see,
real.
that's the kind of intimidation and stuff I'm talking about.
You
But go
you can
ahead.
you could hear a pin drop when he won. But I I I think about that like for like I'm like I may be home calling out of work on Tuesday. Wednesday.
Yeah.
I'm like, y'all not about to be out
Yeah.
here wilding
That week is
out on
gonna
me.
be a little sketch.
These streets are gonna be rap.
Yeah, they're gonna be a
Rap.
little wild. They're gonna be a little
You
wild.
know,
They're gonna be a
so
little
I be
wild.
thinking about it all the time. Walk across the street, I'm like, okay, am I gonna get?
Mhm.
I was coming out to Target a couple weeks ago, and this gentleman has been making his business to stay parked in front of the Target and hold up very derogatory signs about Democrats and people who vote
Really?
Democrat, and just riding through the Target drop with these
At
signs,
Target?
and I'm like, in Target, in front of Target. And it was just really very, very, very interesting. And I'm like, mm, like, what if he was throwing things on people or something? Like, what is he, I don't know. What kind of assumptions is he making about who's Democrat, who's Republican? Like, what is his thought process around any of these things? I mean,
Yeah.
all of the little posters were very derogatory. They all had
Really?
profane language. All of them were saying really rude
Really?
things. It was just really rude. And he was just slow driving with the one hand out the window holding up the sign.
So he was
I'm
just
like,
like
people are very
ghetto
invested. I don't
holding it out the
know.
window.
Huh?
He was just like ghetto holding it out the
Ghetto
window.
holding
He
it
was
at the
like,
window, just pimp driving. Like, I was like, yo, bruh.
see, that's the emboldened stuff that I'm talking about. Like,
I was like, oh, you just gonna pimp drive through here like that? Like, what you doing?
I don't
I was like, oh, okay.
understand. I don't
What's your
understand.
signs? You got signs out here. You're just
That
doing things.
is
What's
crazy.
merch? I was like,
Oh,
okay, okay.
that's that's the kind of stuff right there. And then that'll be the same joker
Mm.
who, as soon as one of these, if one of these civil rights rulings get overdrawn, he gonna be the one in Target doing the most.
Yeah, right, right.
You know,
Right. I guess for certain
man.
things, though, at the end of the day, I don't know. Maybe this is my mindfulness moment about it all, um, and why I'm grateful. Um, I had someone say to me, "It's a choice between Babylon and Sodom and Gomorrah," and I was like, never thought about it like that.
Mm.
And then they said Babylon, God delivered us out of, and I was like, wow, you're right. And then and that was what somebody else had said to me. So let me just preface all of that. Okay, let me just say that, put that out there, precursor. Someone I was in a conversation and it was said to me. Um, the close of the conversation though ended in the fact that, and my mindful moment is, throughout it all, we need to remain prayerful
Oh, for sure.
because it's going to take um, God to keep us in all of it. Um, I think we're just coming down to the wire as really being able to say whose side are you on, in the sense of, like, it is not necessarily, politics is not necessarily a spiritual argument, should not be a spiritual argument, but I
Mm-mm.
think what it does do is it makes you evaluate your spiritual position
Yeah.
and know that the times that we're in, and and really begin to determine for yourself, um, how do I want to present myself, whatever this world is going to be doing. Who do I want to present myself as a believer, and how am I going to do that, and how am I going to represent Christ the most effective way that I can, and
Mhm.
and then the other part to that is my faith has to really be activated, because we're living in the end times, and either way it goes. I said to the person we were talking, I said, I am a pilgrim and a stranger
We are.
living
But
in
we are
this
though.
land. And so I'm like, and I have really felt that lately. Like, I'm a
Hmm.
pilgrim and a
Yeah.
stranger. And I don't,
I
that's
have
where I
too
can
these
say,
past couple days. Yep.
yeah, I'm a pilgrim and a stranger. And how much should I expect from this country, especially, to honor
Mm-hmm.
God and his
From this
value and who he is,
world.
right? And what evils are the evils I can deal with, and what evils, without making it personal, right? Because I ain't gonna be any less black when I wake up
No,
tomorrow, right?
ma'am.
Or next week on the 6th,
Correct.
after the elections. And
That's true.
so it's going to take a God for us to
God.
be kept, and to be protected on either side of this thing. Um, because where sin abounds, grace does abound, but there's also consequence. And we have to be mindful that a lot of what we're seeing and experiencing in the world is a direct relation to us just being progressively more consumed. And so my heart and my desire is to just, Lord, let me be in the right place with you. Because,
Yeah.
I just want to be in the right place with you. So
Because being in
that's
the
my
right,
mindfulness moment.
my mindful moment is that no matter what happens, God is still on the throne.
He's on the throne, child. He's been bringing us out a long
He's
time.
still on the throne. And that's for me personally, because I've been having some moments like, what if he wins? What if it doesn't go and people really start wilding out? I think it's going to be an issue either way because they're already a little crazy in the brain. But God is still on the throne, and it is His world. It's His.
I am
It's
his
His.
people.
Well, when I say that, I
I
mean
belong to
it's
him.
His creation. When I say that, I mean it's His creation.
Yeah.
And He knows, and He knows the beginning, the middle, and the end of it.
Yeah, he does.
Right. And everything, all the other things in between. So, the reassurance for me is that He's still on the throne, and He owns it all.
Yeah, he's
He
greater.
owns it all.
He
He
is the
made
Lord of all.
yeah. He's the Lord of all of it, and although it's not existing the way He originally intended. um, which makes us strangers in it, right?
I'm a stranger.
Uh,
I'm like, this word
it's still
strange to me. It's
His, and
all
He's in
strange to me.
control. And I have to remember that no matter what, at the end of all of the things, at the end of all of the days, He has the final say.
Yeah.
He has the final say.
Yeah.
So thanks, homies, for joining us. I'm glad
Yes.
you made it on here, sis.
I'm sorry, guys. I was late. I was,
You was handling some
doing family things. Yeah.
some business
But
that was
I'm
necessary.
so glad that you joined us
Yes.
tonight here on Churchville Chronicles.
And we will be back next Thursday at 7 p.m. And
Yeah.
at that time, the election will have happened.
Yes.
And a
We're going to have a
decision
lot to talk about
will have
on
been
the other
made.
side.
So we may have to have this conversation.
I may be locked in my house up in here.
I mean, we might all be locked in.
Might be locked down.
We might be locked down or just hiding out for a minute. Yeah,
but I'll be up here on
staying
the
off the
Instagram.
streets. We don't know. But we'll be back here and we'll be talking about the aftermath next week. Is that what we're doing?
Aftermath.
The aftermath of the election, and want to get people's next week. I really hope that a lot of people log on, and because I really want to know what people think.
Yeah, I need y'all to do that. So tell a friend and a friend of a friend of a friend and share the good live.
Because I really want to know what people think either way. However it goes, we want we want to know. So thanks once again for those who jumped on. We were so grateful that you joined us tonight for Church Goes Chronicles. And we look forward to seeing you next week, same time,
same place.
day, same place. And if you haven't followed or commented or shared, please do so. Please. Not only here on Instagram, do it on Facebook, do it on YouTube, because we on there too.
Okay.
And starting in December, I think we said, we'll be going live on YouTube.
Yeah.
So yeah.
That's the goal and the plan. So go on over there, tell them about us, and let's get it popping.
Let's get it popping. Thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you guys next week. I don't know, is it gonna work? Next week right here on Church Girls Chronicles. We love you guys, and we will always talk for real. Have an amazing night.
Have an amazing night.
Bye.
Bye, guys.